pen I can use? Change handbag.
Welcome the Board of Directors and welcome all to our agenda meeting for the November 10th, 2020. This is our opportunity to review the agenda for our formal board meeting that will be held on November the 17th, 2020. We would also like to welcome Directors Hendricks, Richardson, Webb, Fortson, and Vice Mayor Wyrick, who are all online participating. Before we move on with the agenda, I do want to take this time to recognize At-Large City Director Joan Adcock, as well as At-Large City Director Dean Campuris, who recently won their re-election, as well as City Director Cappy Peck, who ran unopposed, and also take time to welcome Mr. Antoine Phillips, who will be serving in position 9 as our new At-Large City Director in 2020. So now I want to just give all of our returning board members and our new board member for the 2020-2024 years a round of applause. That being said, we'll now proceed with today's agenda. We have one modification in M1. Are there any questions from items 1 through 15? Director Adcock?
Yes, if not this evening, I would like for Mr. Howard to explain these programs, because we have lots of people right now that are looking for home repairs and other things that needs to be done to their homes. And I would like for him to make a presentation on these either this afternoon or next week.
Yes, what we'll try to do is get through the agenda, and once we get the agenda, we'll try to get some time today, but also we'll be doing the revenue projections. Director Howard, how impactful and brief can you be? All right, we'll let you go.
Mayor, I have a question.
And Director Hines, as Director Howard's coming up, what's your question?
I'm sorry, it's on different item. I'm sorry.
My question is on this, on the housing.
You have a particular question? Could you please proceed?
So maybe he can respond while he's up there. I just wanted to know on resolution number 8.
Director Adcock, are you referring to 8 and 9?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so resolution 8 and 9, it's a part of our home investment partnerships program that we receive funding from HUD each year. 15% of that funding that we receive under the home investment partnership program is a statute that we provide that to our community housing development organizations. And so we put out an RFP to receive requests for proposals from our CHODOs here in Little Rock. Each year they have to be certified, and so with that RFP going out, we only receive 2 respondents, and those 2 respondents were in affordable housing and University District Development Corporation.
Mr. Howard, there is a new CDC in our city. It is the Philander Smith CDC, and I would like for you to talk to them because they, I think, are also a CHODO.
Yes.
Thank you.
And my question is, do we know where the inaffordable housing units will be built? I know University District has to be within their boundaries.
That's correct.
But what about inaffordable housing?
Inaffordable housing has a wide area. Their housing has been in your ward. They did one on East Twin Lakes, as you know, a new construction. And they're looking to do something, one in your ward, and they're going to do something in Ward 1 too. So they'll do 3 units total in affordable housing, and University District Development Corporation will do 5 total units.
Okay, so is it still Roma and Jerry?
It's Roma Ison.
Roma.
Jerry's no longer within affordable anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And number 9?
Number 9 is the same. That's University District Development Corporation. They'll do 5 units total in the University District Development Corporation area, and that's in that Midtown to ULR area.
Okay, and if anyone is interested in purchasing one of these homes, who in those districts should they get in touch with?
You can get in contact with Roma Isom with In Affordable Housing and Barrett Allen with University District Development Corporation.
And your office number for them to get in touch with your office?
501-371-6825, and they can contact me and I will direct them to them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Honeywell, if you could address Director Hines as a question from item number 10.
And 11, Mayor.
I'd just like a kind of recap on what we're spending this almost $100,000 for, when I thought when we passed Complete Streets, there wouldn't be any extra cost associated with it.
Yeah, I thought we'd done that too.
And then Director Wright has a question on number 11 as you're preparing for number 10. Director Honeywell.
Director Hines, this is actually a contract with a firm that's going to look at our bike master plan. And part of what they're doing is reviewing the master plan to bring it up to date, number one, and number two, to revise the plan so what's shown across the city as being our different levels of bicycle facilities are actually in locations that can be constructed or implemented in the future. Right now, if you look at our bike master plan, we have bicycle lanes shown on streets that have on-street parking or are very narrow, so the ability to actually put any kind of bike infrastructure onto those streets is impossible because of the way the street's used now. You have to completely rebuild the road to do that. So what they're going to do is look at the entire city across from east to west and figure out routes that you are able to go in and do these types of infrastructure projects without impacting current uses or at least minimizing those impacts. So we're really looking at something that's a feasible document that we can use moving forward versus what we have right now.
So we didn't already have that in place, even though we passed a whole ordinance on our Complete Streets and our master bike plan, so that's never been woven together.
Well, this has been in the works since we've done Complete Streets. It's taken us this long to get the funding in place to actually be able to go and look at that entire master bike plan.
Right. I guess when we asked the question when we passed Complete Streets, was this going to cost anything? And we continually heard, no, this wasn't going to cost anything. And now I'm sitting here looking at a $100,000 study because we haven't integrated our Complete Streets master plan and our bike master plan. So it just seems a little disingenuous of what we were told at the time. Where is this funding coming from?
It's coming from a grant and then also our street fund.
Okay, well, how much is the grant and how much is the street fund?
$50,000 is the grant and $49,000 is the street fund.
So we're not pulling the $49,000 out of our grant funding, Mayor or Bruce? That's coming out of our street fund?
What Director Honeywell just shared out of our street fund.
Okay, so we don't have any money. Don't we have a whole grants allocation in our budget that we can tap for this? And Mr. Honeywell, as you know, I'm getting heavy pressure from my ward about traffic signals and traffic safety out there, and then we continue to spend money out of our street fund when I'm told there's no money in our street fund to do these projects. I'm, as Director Richardson said, I'm having some cognitive dissonance. But I'd like and I'd like to hold this separate, please, Mayor.
Sure thing. And Mr. Honeywell, will you share when the Complete Streets program was passed?
It's been several years since Complete Streets been passed.
So I want to make sure it's very clear that I don't know if any promises that were made wasn't made during my tenure. So make sure that's very clear.
Oh, I'm sure you got clean hands on it. It was done previous to your administration, Mayor Scott.
And again, my understanding, Mr. Honeywell, because of this, the Complete Streets program and this particular, this is going across the entire city, correct?
This looks at the master bike plan, which is located in the master street plan for the entire city.
Thank you.
Complete Streets has to do with how we build streets and how they accommodate all modes of transportation, not just bike.
Oh, I remember
So-
exactly when we passed it.
So there's a difference between the bike master plan, which lays out where bicycle facilities are proposed to be placed in the city, and the Complete Streets ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Moore, if you'll hold item number 11 separate.
10 separate.
10 separate. And then, Mr. Honeywell, if you will explain, well, I guess in the meantime, Director Hines, is there anything specific you would like for item 10? Do you need any additional information?
No, I think we've got what we need.
All right. Item
And
number 11. So
you
no
have an
additional information needs to be shared,
No.
Mr. Moore?
I was just going to say,
I mean,
I don't know.
unless you can give me some more context and the answer to why we're not pulling this out of our grant funding budget, and we're pulling it out of our street fund.
And I don't know which item Director Hendricks wanted to speak on, but she just called and said she's been trying to, I just wanted to let you know that.
And Director Hendricks, we'll come to you shortly. And we'll have just want to make sure the Director Honeywell now, item number 11.
11 and 12.
Now
And
12?
Both of them seem to be
11
together.
and 12.
Okay, on number 11, which is the revision to the Michael Baker contract, as you remember, the city received a grant for Bowman Road. And as part of that construction, the Canis Road Bowman intersection is being included in that project. That intersection was actually designed under a different contract. So what this
Now,
is,
wait a minute, say it again now. It was designed what?
Canis and Bowman. You have Bowman Road from the intersection with Canis
sure, I mean,
going south is the project. We also have a separately designed project that was the Canis intersection itself at Bowman.
Exactly, that's,
So what this is doing is allowing for the engineer to provide construction inspection services for the entire project, and so we can meet the federal guidelines. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Because both of these are the same thing. We're incorporating the intersection and Bowman Road, the Canis-Bowman intersection, and the construction of Bowman, so they meet the federal regulations, so we can use the federal grant money to build all of this. This is cleaning up the contracts with the environmental side of things, and then there also is a contract for construction inspection services, which will help us meet the federal requirements during the construction phase. That engineer will help us with all the paperwork and inspections to make sure that everything's being done per the federal guidelines. That's what these two contracts extensions are for.
when did we get the grant?
That was, I believe, either early this year or late in 19.
Okay, because I was not made aware of that.
The Bowman Road grant that we got for $2 million from MetroPlan.
And when was that presented to?
The board approved applying for that grant application probably in mid-2019, and then it was awarded in late 2019, I believe. I don't remember the exact dates, but we can get that for you.
Yeah, please do. Maybe I got caught up in COVID, but I don't recall that being told that we got the grant. So I would like, because my constituents out there in the Bowman Road area, Woodlands Edge, Bodie Creek, Cherry Creek, Sandpiper, all of those people, this is a major thoroughfare for them. And I need to let them know that we're doing this.
Okay?
And if I didn't know, how could I share with them? Now, like I said, late 2019, whole bunch of stuff can fall through the cracks, and then we got right into COVID and all of that. So I'm going to
I'll get you all the
move
dates
that
and
aside.
information
I
on that.
just need to know the particulars,
Sure.
background, current, and then I'm going to push this out to them to let them know that we are working on Bowman, because that is that's major.
Mayor, one other question.
And Director Wright, we just want to acknowledge and recognize your advocacy, and that's one of the reasons why it's been able to get done.
Well, I sure appreciate it.
Director Hines?
On item 15, Mayor, we're selling some City of Little Rock property. Is this just more of a right-of-way acquisition, or how big is this piece of property, and how much is UMS paying us for it?
This is a pretty big deal from a community and a targeted community development standpoint, and public-private partnership between the city of Little Rock as well as UAMS. A lot of individuals have been part of this, but I want to make sure to just take time to recognize Mr. Moore, who's kind of been a part of these negotiation process. So, Mr. Moore, if you could share that information of this very big deal from a public-private partnership standpoint and targeted community development.
Yes, sir. Director Hines, this is very similar to the partnerships that we developed with the Pulaski County Health Department and Children's Hospital out in Southwest Little Rock, where we had park property that was not going to be developed, and we went into a long-term lease agreement with both of those entities. So again, very similar. This is a child development center that will be utilized for UMS faculty and staff, and also for the community members in that area. They in this case, they need to own it because they're going after some new market tax credits, and they have to be the owner of the property. So we're selling this just as we did with the others, even though those were long-term leases for basically $1 nominal fee. They're going to present this to the U of A trustee board in about 2 weeks to get approval to expend dollars to build the center. And this is, as you remember, the city embarked on purchasing property along Jonesboro. And this would be on the east side of Jonesboro, and we'll be able to, John Eckert and his staff have done a great job of integrating on the west side bike trails and everything that will connect to the zoo and War Memorial and also to this property.
And so, and that being said, this is truly one of the pillars that we'll be able to demonstrate as a city on our efforts to lean in on equitable economic development as well as early childhood education south of 630, east of 30 areas. As you all know, that we've been working towards with our economic incentive package, as well as with a number of different developments with opportunity zones and land bank. And there's been a lot of activity, and this is an opportunity for the board in a public-private partnership to really bring commercial, well, it's not commercial because it's a healthcare, but bringing organizational development that provides for that south of 630 area. So really excited about this partnership with the UAMS, UA Board of Trustees, and other partners that we'll be able to announce soon.
Hey, Brandon, so this will be on the same side of Jonesboro as the Children's Library?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, from items 1 through 15.
Don't forget Director Hendricks.
Yes, I think Director Hendricks, you would like to speak on item, which item, Director Hendricks?
I have several, and I'll go on one by one.
Yes, ma'am.
23, number 4, resolution number 24.
1 second, Director Hendricks. Can we get the volume up?
Okay.
We can hear you. We can hear, just make sure here. All right. We can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Number 4. It says something about property at 2301 South Main, that it's a building there. I'm not familiar with the building being there. So if Mr. Moore, someone would check that. I also am concerned, these 2 neighborhood revitalization, will this be contracts that will be handling these 2 items?
Director Hendricks, back on item 4, that's South Martin, not Maine.
Okay. But now on my thing, it says Maine. So you need to correct that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And also, I'm looking at vacant lots. Oh, my real thing is I want to know if minorities will be handling this neighborhood revitalization. What is that all about? And Mr. Moore, start sending me information so that I will know what we're talking about, particularly since the virus is going on. I don't go to land bank meetings. And that falls under land bank.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 4 and 5, so send me more information. Will someone explain number 8? What is that all about?
Director Howard, if you will explain number 8, please.
Director Hendricks, number 8, we're providing home investment partnership program funds to in affordable housing to produce 3 affordable housing units within the city of Little Rock.
And when you said we, where's the money coming from?
It's coming from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, from HUD.
Okay.
It's a part of our grant
Again.
funding we receive each year.
Okay, stay at the mic now. I was asking on these areas where you are talking about the neighborhood revitalization, are we talking about contracts or what is that all about? Contractors. I'm concerned about minority contractors. So would contractors be hired? What's going on there?
Yes, ma'am. These are contracts that we have between the actual organizations and the city of Little Rock.
Are these people black or white?
Inaffordable is minority.
Yeah, I'll break it down to you, BJ. I see you doing your eyes over and over.
Inaffordable is minority.
What?
Inaffordable is a minority organization. Inaffordable housing is a minority organization.
Okay, and send me the names of those folks, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
That's about it. Oh, also, would you have the clerk to identify the locations, the Ward 1, Ward 2? I noticed that some wards she have listed and other wards are not. Start listing those areas of what we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yes, ma'am. We'll now move to the separate items. I'm sorry, before we go to separate items number 16 and 17, Director Adcock.
No, mine was 16.
All right, Director Adcock has a question for item 16.
I would like to hear from the Housing Department if, when we put this on the list, it was because they did not have the assets to rehab this, and I want to know what type of assets they have now to rehab it and what the plans are.
Yes, ma'am, and that's actually planning and development. Director Collins, if you would.
Director Adcock, prior we received documentation from the property owner of assets that they had come up with to rehab it. What was presented was just a portion of the entire building. The plan was presented to do, at the time, structural rehabilitation and also remove the asbestos. I'll have to pull up and I'll get you the exact dollar amounts that was submitted, but I believe it was in the neighborhood of about $30,000 was what was in the fund at that time. I might be off a little bit. If you give me a minute, I can try to pull it up. But when we do estimates, the estimates for the building, when we look at it, what we look for is rehabilitation to bring the entire building up, not just a portion, and that varies based upon the building. Typically, that can be from $90 to $100 a square foot, and rehabilitation of older buildings, and when it is historic, it could be a little bit more than that. I can say that our estimate, that when we looked at it, we would anticipate that the neighborhood of around $450,000 to $500,000 would not be uncommon for this size building to rehabilitate it back to code and occupiable space, and that would do the entire building.
Mr. Collins, I think that some of the people that's been coming and talking to us during citizen communication time had said that they had all the funds to do this building, but you're telling us that they have not shown you that they have all the funds to completely rehab this building?
Not for the estimate that I have just explained for what we would look at for rehabilitation to bring the entire building up to current code. We received a partial.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Director Wright.
that was what my understanding was too, that they have a buyer and they have the funds to renovate. So will that information be forthcoming, or can we have the applicant here in our board meeting to make that presentation so that we can be assured that the funding is available?
Yes, we'll ask the applicant to be present at the board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, Mayor, ordinance number 17, I'd like to know what that is.
Well, actually, Director Hines had a question on ordinance number 17 as well. Mr. Attorney?
Director Wright, this is the scooter ordinance.
Oh, I thought
It was brought to the board last year, and it was brought back this year. The General Assembly has passed a statute that has clarified what cities can and cannot do as to scooters. The provisions of the state statute are included in this. There is a provision that anyone under the age of 16 has to wear a helmet. The failure to do so can be an ordinance violation. There's also a provision that there will be an annual franchise fee for right-of-way use of $10,000 plus $75 per scooter that's used within Little Rock. I don't know how many that Lime intends to use at this particular time, but I've heard a number around 100, so that'd be, what, $7,500 plus about $17,500 just for them to have the right to use this on the city. Even so, they have asked, and we have said, no, it's per unit. So if they want to move units in and out, each time they move in a unit, they'll have to pay a $75 fee for a permit.
So this is that little green lime thing that you ride around on?
The green lime one is the one that we're familiar with now. We have had an inquiry from someone from Northwest Arkansas who wants to meet our standards too, so we may have more than one company.
So these things are actually profitable? Apparently, huh?
I have no idea, but people are riding them, I can see that.
Okay.
Director Hines?
So that was, I think, Tom, you answered one of my questions. Why is it 16 and not 18? Because it talks about being 18, and I guess that's, if the state's regulated that, we can't make that more restrictive, correct?
The state recommended 18. I think that the ordinance is 16 in it.
It says 16, but I
Right.
was kind of curious.
We're more restrictive.
16 is not the age of consent, and I find it odd that the state would allow a 16-year-old. I do know that in some instances, we allow 16-year-olds to operate ATVs, but with a helmet in the state. So I kind of, but if it goes back to the state statute, then I guess we maybe have our hands tied a little bit.
We can impose a stricter standard of 16.
I mean, you mean to 18? It's 16 in our ordinance.
Yeah, 16 is in our ordinance, and I think the statute says 18, but we can be stricter than the 18. We can be 16. And it was thought.
Well, no, that wouldn't be stricter. That would be more permissive if you see what I'm saying? It says a person's under 16 years of.
16.
But
is
if you're
legal, I can
between
tell you
60, if you're under 16, so 16 or 17, you can ride one without a helmet, based on what I'm reading. And
except in Little Rock.
no, it's, okay, shall not be operated. Okay, all right. The shalls and shoulds. Okay, so these are all the prohibited, so they've got to be 18. If they're under 18, they got to wear a helmet.
Yes.
Okay. They can't ride them on the sidewalk.
The language in there can allow them at some point to be ridden on sidewalks if the company is given express permission to do so, and if there is signage to that effect. They're not supposed to be really ridden on sidewalks downtown,
But
you know, I mean, we tried to write it so that we wouldn't have to pass another ordinance, and you'll remember, for example, when Capitol was bricked up, that would be a situation where it could be.
well, and I've heard some complaints from some friends that live downtown that we've got certain areas of downtown, we don't allow bicycles on the sidewalk, but we're allowing these scooters. And I think that's kind of contradictory. I think there's been more scooter pedestrian collisions downtown from what I've heard anecdotally that, you know, I want to make sure if we're going to pass this, that we do it in the right way, Tom, that I mean, if it requires another ordinance, but the biggest complaint I hear downtown is folks get on them and they're riding them on the sidewalks with pedestrians and these don't mix. When I've traveled to Europe, Amsterdam in particular, they even segregate the bike traffic from the pedestrian traffic because the bicyclists will literally kill you in Amsterdam if you get into a bike lane. So,
C is written so that unless the area has been deemed appropriate by the mayor and there is signage in place, then you've got to stay off the sidewalks. That's how.
so that means we've got to incur the cost of putting signage up to say you can't ride a scooter. That's what I'm trying to get at.
No, we would have to put up, or signage would have to be put up that a scooter could be ridden.
Could be
on
used.
that
Okay,
area.
all right. I'm just wanting to make sure we've covered the bases. Thank you.
Director Webb, then Director Adcock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the same question, it's not in the ordinance, but you and I got a question on Twitter just a little while ago. And I was hoping that the folks who are responsible for these scooters can answer this before next week. I've had a constituent say that the price says one thing and then they're being charged something else. And if we can make sure we get the answer to that before we vote on this, I'd appreciate it.
Director Webb, is there any way you could forward that to me? I'm not on Twitter.
Yes, sir. I'll copy it and send it to you.
Sorry, Director Adcock.
Yes. Mr. Carpenter, this says designated areas. I would like to see a map where these are allowed because I have been over off of Asher and seen children riding these. I've also seen some of them showing up in Southwest Little Rock. And so what exactly are the designated areas?
Director Adcock, I don't know of any designated areas yet. This is just permissive if there is an area where it seems like it can work and there's a request made and it's reviewed and the authority is given and then signage is put up, they can be worn on they can be driven on sidewalks.
So they can be any place in Little Rock?
No, it would only be the places where there's signage that allows them there.
And I think Director Adcock, just at this current, and I think we all will remember there was a lot of interest into the Lime scooters when they first kind of showed up. There's a process from the legislative standpoint. Clearly, this is our opportunity to kind of create regulation. But right now, there is no regulation as it relates. It's really kind of the open market. And they are going, I mean, you'll see a Lime scooter just about anywhere in the city of Little Rock. And so this gives us the opportunity to kind of create those designated areas.
Okay.
But we also got to look at the cost, as Director Hines has shared, because just like we've done with bikes and bicycles, this would be in the same mode of that fashion. But we first got to make this first step.
And this would be enforced by the police as well?
I believe, well, it'll be enforced by not necessarily police, but by our traffic.
It can be enforced by the police, Mayor. It would be an ordinance violation, so they would have authority.
Yeah, that's one from a traffic standpoint, but.
Right.
Director Compuris.
Tom, if we pass this, tell me about what liability we're creating
The
with
city,
this. I mean, for the people that ride it, for the city, tell me the chain of liability if people follow the rules, don't follow the rules, or something happens.
well, Director Compuris, at this
And you've got to speak in your mic, because, thank you.
No. At this juncture, the people who are writing it and offering it would be the ones that would be at any potential liability. I think the city would not, because all this is an ordinance that says if it's going to be done, it's going to be subject to these restrictions. So if a parent gives a 12-year-old a credit card and lets them go riding up and down the sidewalk in the Heights Hillcrest area, and hit somebody, then that's going to be an action for that parent and the person hit. It's not going to be the city's. We have reviewed pretty carefully what's going on around the country. There have been some very serious articles about injuries, but the problems have been people not obeying the rules. And at this juncture, you know, we've got to hope that people are going to follow the law.
Well, that's my second question. Based on the way our sidewalks work and our streets work, how are we going to follow the law?
I'm trying to remember. I think that the rules have to be included with variants, that the operator has to have those available to the individual. There is a penalty for violation, which allows a potential fine up to $1,000 if they need, and that can be a continuing fine if it keeps going on. There is insurance that's required of the company that is going to be $1 million per occurrence with a $5 million aggregate, and even then they're supposed to have an umbrella or excess liability coverage of $5 million. So it'd be against an insurance company if there's an accident.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hey, Tom,
Director Hines?
Tom, I want to read this because I went back and reread it. So in section 3, it says operation of a shared scooter. It says a shared scooter shall not be operated by a person under 16 years of age unless the person is wearing an appropriate helmet for the use of any transportation vehicle, which including but not limited to bicycle helmet, which meets the standards. And it goes down through there.
Right.
And is authorized by an adult 18 years of age to do so. So what I'm saying here is, can we make that 18 years of age? Because it allows somebody 16 or 17 to ride without a helmet if they're under 18. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Director.
And I didn't know if the state statute precluded us from doing that, but it seems to me that, I know there's some parents out there and that probably not going to be real happy with us when their 16 or 17-year-old tells them they don't have to wear a helmet on one of these things. And I've got college students that have had bad wrecks on them and had some serious injuries that parents are unhappy with up there too. So I'm just curious.
Director Hines, I think that this language is,
It's Scribner's error, maybe?
well, I think it's from the statute, but I will go back
Okay.
and look.
Well, and I didn't know if we were able to be more restrictive than the statute in that case.
But you want somebody 16 or under is,
18 or, 17 or under. I don't, once you reach the age of 18, you're the age of legal consent, correct?
for most things, yes.
For most things. So it seems to me that why would we let 16 and 17-year-olds ride without a helmet?
Okay.
That just, if it's permissive under the state statute, that would be something I would ask if it's amenable to the rest of the board to change.
I will review and send that out.
And it probably would read 17 years or under, because this way it's under 16 means if you were 16, you could, and I get real good at reading this because when my daughter turned 16, she couldn't hunt for free anymore in the state of Arkansas. She had to start buying a hunting license, so, and she couldn't go on youth hunt anymore either, so.
But I've long known it's not fair to use your daughter as an example because no one can meet that standard.
Director Adcock?
Mine's another item.
That we've already went over, which?
No, it's not on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question of Mr. Carpenter or you.
Please.
Okay, I have always believed that the evaluation every year of the city attorney and of the city manager was required by law, and we have not had that this year. And I've asked for it 3 or 4 times and always told we'll do it later, and we are getting close to December. And so when are we going to do the evaluation of the city attorney and city manager for 2020?
We will do it before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And you said you've always been told, that's the first
It was
time.
required by law.
I understand that. We had that last year. So my question is you said you've always been told.
And I want us to have the evaluation if it's required of us to have it.
It's required of me to bring it forth to the board, and we will have it. I was just confused by the question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're still in the middle of the year. We've been dealing with a lot, and that's the only reason why we haven't had it as it relates to the pandemic. That being said, from items 1 through 17, any more questions? All right, we'll now conclude our agenda meeting.
Mayor.
We'll now open back up our policy meeting. Before we start our policy meeting with the objective of our revenue projections, Director Wright.
Thank you. Mayor, I've been getting a lot of complaints in the community about gunshots, and I've turned in a few myself. I was sitting in my living room Sunday, and it was like, you know,
Thank you.
pow, 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 you know, just back-to-back gunshots. So, you know, I did what I needed to do. I reported it, and ultimately found out some young ladies had gotten into an argument and decided they want to shoot each other. But anyway, and then I got a text from another constituent that was over near 32nd and Boyle Park about gunshots. So my question is, can we get some type of update on what's our plan to address all this? And I've been dealing with Capitol Hill and Capitol Lake Estates about the donuts in the road and all that kind of stuff. So I know this stuff is spreading all over, and I just want to know where we are. And as I understand, the Sunday Fun Day, it may have slacked off, but it's still going on. So, and I don't know if you are aware, but last weekend or week before, my days are kind of running together, but at 36 and Colonel Glenn, there was a fatality, and I believe it was 2 young ladies that were racing, and one of them, or both of them, crashed, and they took out the whole traffic signal area, and I know at least one of them died, and I was told both of them did, but this was because they were racing each other. So there appeared to be a major issue here, and I just would like to know where we are, how we're moving forward, and so forth. I understand there's some changes being made tactically, but do we have a handle on this, or what is going on? Is this all because of the virus? And you may not be able to answer any of these questions. I'm just saying.
No,
I wanted to put some out there.
Yeah, I can answer all of those questions.
Okay.
I think first and foremost, we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and there is a increased rise of individuals that are at home. And what you'll see is a large percentage of our homicides are largely due to domestic violence. We have a lot of individuals who aren't normally spending as much time together with one another. We're seeing a rise in mental health issues as well that is contributing to this domestic violence that we're experiencing. And then as it relates to the other issues that you have named, in addition to having people at home, there are a lot of folks that have some extra time on their hand from that standpoint. And so, as you're aware, when we did have issues as it relates to caravanning, we stepped up the overtime to have multiple details to patrol that, and that has significantly diminished. As a result of that, I reached out to a number of the board members, particularly ones that are really passionate about, and we understand that we made some tactical moves with our community resource unit officers that are being detailed to focus on the increased shooting issues that has happened. And so all that being said, yes, we are aware of it. This is a national trend that you're starting to see. Was talking with some of my colleagues across the nation. They are experiencing the same uptick in shootings, and just because there are a lot of folks home and dealing with that as it relates to domestic violence. So this is not unique to the city of Little Rock, and this is a discussion that's going on nationally right now as a result of the different dynamics and environment of that we're experiencing right now. All that being said, one, just want to just really share our appreciation to the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department, because in spite of all that, our overall crime is down by 14 to 15%. And yes, those violent incidents have increased in uptick, but that's something that we're seeing across the nation. And while we are seeing it across the nation, we still are increasing even more saturation tactics to continue to drive it down. So thank you so much for that, Director Wright.
Mayor, Director Richardson wants to speak.
Director Richardson.
Mayor.
Yes, sir, Director Richardson. Director Richardson?
Mayor.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
I don't think he can hear you.
Director Richardson?
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Two quick points. I think you hit the nail on the head with respect to the mental health issues. I think that some parts of our community where we experience a lot of this, there's a stigma attached to treatment. And I think I said before, we haven't provided any form of treatment out of our PIT funds in the last 25 years or so. And I think the mental health aspect is an important component that we need to look at from a public safety standpoint. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And I don't know, Bruce or Tom, you guys may remember back in our gang activity days, and Joan and Dean, you guys may notice, I've seen it. We had a gun buyback program that was instituted in the city, and we considered looking at that as well as a public safety strategy, looking at a gun buyback program. I thought we had one, Bruce or Tom, in the 94 and 95, somewhere around the time at the height of our gang activity. So have we even considered that or thought about that as a public safety strategy?
Yes, and what we'll do is we'll schedule a meeting with you, give you an update here pretty soon, Director Hendricks. I'm sorry, Director Richardson.
So there was Director Richardson. We get confused a lot.
I apologize for that mishap. Please forgive me.
But we are.
You don't look as beautiful as Director Hendricks.
Well, that's true. Nor as young as he does either. But I guess my point is, are we considering that, Mayor Bruce? That's something we're looking at as part of our overall public safety approach. Because as Director Wright indicated, when issues like that happen in my ward, I request directed police patrols, and have been real effective in terms of addressing the random gunshots. And I think a gun backpack program may be helpful. And I think the mental health piece you mentioned is extremely helpful and necessary in certain parts of our community where we have a lot of social ills. So I think we need to have a little bit more deliberate focus, a little bit more deliberate effort on those two areas with respect to our public safety approach.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll now transition to Director Sarah Linehan, our Chief Financial Officer, who will provide our 2021. We're now beginning our 2021 budgeting process. As we know, the last few weeks, we've been walking everyone through the 2020 budget amendment process, and we were thankfully to the members of the Board of Directors for passing our budget amendment. We know that was a lot of hard work. One, want to again give kudos to our finance team as well as the internal budget team that have been navigating through this pandemic for quite some time, and multiple budget amendments from that process. And we're happy to say that we continue to remain great fiscal stewards of the City of Little Rock taxpayer dollars. We're now transition to the 2021 budgeting process. Today, I want to kind of give a schedule for the members of the board. Today, we will go through the 2021 revenue projections. Next week, on November the 17th, we will go through the 2021 budget expenditures, and an opportunity for board members to ask questions and things of that nature. On November the 24th, it is our goal to provide the complete budget for board members to review, and then thereafter go throughout our process, our city board process to an eventual passing of the budget at a later date after November 24th. We do know once you have the complete 2021 budget on November the 24th, you'll be going into the holiday weekend. We did not want to rush the budgeting process, so you'll have kind of those few days going into Thanksgiving as well as that weekend coming out. And then for enough opportunity to study. But also in the midst of this time, we encourage board members, if there are questions, to please direct those questions to myself, our city manager, or our chief financial officer, and we will be able to get those answers to you as quickly as possible as we're going through this journey of our 2021 budgeting process. Again, just want to say thank you to Sarah Linehan, Abdul, and Anita, and the entire finance department, who, in the midst of changing GASB accounting procedures that are being thrown at them in the middle of a pandemic, they've been dealing with a lot of different trainings that they had to go through to ensure that we remain in compliance from that standpoint to get to this point as well. Director Linehan.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said, we're going to focus today on the revenues for all of the funds. We'll go through the general fund first, and then we'll move through the other funds as well. So this will be familiar, same format we've looked at in the past. So first we're going to look at trend data by our major revenue categories. So on page 3, you'll see our property tax. All of the 2020 numbers that you're seeing, everything is actual from 2012 through 2019. The 2020 number that you see is the amended budget that you adopted last week, and then the 2021 number is the forecast. So originally in our 2020 budget, we had anticipated 4.5% or 4% growth in property taxes based on what the county had provided to us. In the amendment, we dropped that back by 1%. So now for 2021, the county has recommended a 2.5% growth rate. I think the assessed valuation was actually a bit higher than that, but they're projecting 2.5% revenue growth. And so that's what we have in here at $31,600,000. I want to make you aware that this includes our Act 9 payments in lieu of taxes as well. So the property tax levy is at about a 2.5% growth. The Act 9 is not growing, so the overall growth rate is about 2.4%. On the next slide, you'll see our county sales tax. This projection is $45.5 million, which represents 0.4% growth from the 2020 amended budget. The development of this forecast includes a reduction of 2% in the periods from January to March when we're comparing to 2020 pre-COVID results. And then we're forecasting an increase of 0.5% over our actual results from April through August. And since that's the last actual result we have available, we're utilizing our amended budget to forecast 2020 and projecting a 0.5% growth over that budget for the months of September through December. So combined, that's a 0.4% growth rate. On the next slide, you'll see our city sales tax. This is going to be basically flat in comparison to our 2020 amended budget. The forecast of $59.47 million includes a reduction of 2.5% for the periods from January to March in comparison to pre-COVID results. This is a little bit more of a reduction than what we're seeing at the county. The growth throughout the pandemic for the county has been at a faster pace than the city. We've been a little bit harder hit on our restaurant and hotel tax revenues, where people who used to eat, dine, entertain themselves inside of Little Rock are staying closer to home. So that the groceries, the products they're buying are going directly to their home addresses, and there's a little bit more growth in the county. In addition, we've had a lot of growth out at the port with some of our economic development activities that's just outside of the city limits. So we're enjoying some of that growth on the county side, our share of the county tax, but the city tax has been a little bit behind that. So again, for the months of January to March, which are in comparison to pre-COVID results, we're looking at that 2.5% decrease, but then we're going with a 0.5% increase over actual results from April to August, and then over our amended budget from September to December. And while this is the same growth rate over budget that we're putting for the county in these later months, you'll recall in our amendment, we reduced the city a little bit more for the period from April through December. Again, looking at our actual results through August, and then the budget from September through December. On the next slide, we'll look at our franchise fees. We're projecting those decreased to $28.51 million with the 2020 budget amendment. A lot of that had to do with an adjustment to the rider for energy, and then also very mild weather, and then a reduced collection rate for the utility companies during COVID. We have received forecasts directly from the major utilities, Energy, CenterPoint, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority, and Central Arkansas Water. And the blended result of growth that we're expecting is 2.2%, or $633,000 above our amended budget. This is still, I want to point out, 1.8% below our 2019 actual results. On the next slide, we'll look at charges for services. So charges for services, we're anticipating growth of about 33% over our 2020 amended budget, which will bring us to $10.23 million. And while that sounds like a huge amount of growth, when you compare to our 2019 actual results, we're still about 36% below that. So our charges for services dropped off in the neighborhood of 67–70% during 2020 due to the impact of COVID. So some of the key components, our zoo, for example, there's growth of 74%, which will bring it to $2.3 million in 2021, up from the $1.3 million that we experienced in the current year, but it's still 36% below 2019 actual results, which was over $3 million. Jim Daly Fitness and Aquatic Center, we're showing growth of 76% there, but that's still 42% below the 2019 actual results. Our airport and fire services will have just a small 2% growth. That's reimbursement of actual payroll expenses for the fire and police services that are provided at the airport. And then one of the components that is bringing us more revenue, we talked about this some in the amendment, but we've done a detailed analysis of the revenues that are coming in from the 911 fee. We have $1 million, and this is over and above what reimburses the expense of the maintenance of the computer-aided dispatch system, of the Motorola technology, the phone system. That's all accounted for in the Special Revenue 911 Fund. And then any fees in excess of that are transferred to offset our 911 operator salaries. So in the current budget, we have $1 million. We're going to be able to increase that by $750,000 for 2021. So that'll be up to $1,750,000 in the 2021 budget. And that's due to the legislative change that took place that increased that rate of payment. On slide 8, we'll talk about business licenses. So here, annually in our licenses and permitting budget, about little over $6.8 million is attributed just to the annual business licenses that are due January 1st. This we're forecasting relatively flat. We had a slight dip associated with some business closures, but we've also had a lot of applications for new small businesses. So we're expecting this to be relatively flat. There are no rate increases included in the budget. On the next slide, I'm showing you the mixed drink portion of our business license budget, which in the past has contributed between $2.5 and $3 million. This has been a steadily growing source of revenue. It's the license and fees charged on mixed drinks served at restaurants and bars. So we're forecasting that to grow back to $2.5 million, which is about 31% above our 2020 amended budget, but it's still a 36% decline, or we had a 36% decline in 2020 associated with COVID, and we're still going to be about $1 million or $500,000 below our 2019 actual results. Next, we'll move on to fines and fees. So our fines and fees have also been affected by COVID. This includes not only our court fines, but also our parking fees, rezoning fees, incident report fees, animal services, and police reports. Cumulatively, we're expecting these to grow about 32% from the amended budget to $1.82 million. Again, the decline that we experienced in 2020 was primarily due to the impact of COVID. And we talked about this last year. Cumulatively, our revenue from fines and fees has decreased 38% over the last 10 years. And this is due to the move, I think, to include more options on time pay, but also more community service options and things like that. So we're actually having less revenue from fines. So on page 11, the impact of all of the key general fund revenues before any transfers in would be growth of approximately 2.7% over our 2020 amended budget, which would bring us to $205,247,569. Which is still about $4.4 million or 2.1% below our 2019 actual revenues. Now on the next slide, when we include our transfers in, and I'll talk a little bit about the transfers, we're anticipating the revenue to be $210,100,969, which is a 3% increase in total then for the revenues plus transfers in comparison to the 2020 amended budget, but it still trails our 2019 actual results by $3.7 million, so just shy of 4%. So the net transfers in will increase by $617,000, which are now included. The numbers you're seeing on the graph are the total including transfers in, but if you talk about just the transfers in, the total is $4,853,400. But of that, there is just under $1 million, about $1,825,000 that is what I would call a one-time transfer. So you'll recall in our budget amendment, we set aside the health insurance holiday premium savings that we will experience in December. We set that aside in a special project to utilize in the 2021 budget to offset the 7.5% increase that we will have in our health insurance costs. So this will keep the cost in 2020 neutral for both the city and employees. The cost of that in the general fund, that transfer in, will be $975,982. In addition, we're utilizing $850,000 of the 2019 contingency that we had set aside that we did not need to utilize in 2019. We used our 2020 contingency in our first budget amendment in April when we cut just under $5 million from the budget. But this amount remained. We're going to transfer this into the general fund as a one-time source to help temporarily bridge that gap with the reduction in revenue that we're seeing due to the COVID pandemic. This is not meant to be something that will be available to fund ongoing operations in the future. This is a one-time adjustment due to lost revenue because we're in a pandemic situation, and we're gradually seeing that increase. So on the next slide, you'll see kind of the detailed revenue review by category. So here's where you can see all the things that we've talked about, but you can also see the charges for services broken down by Parks and Recreation, River Market, Golf, Fitness, Zoo, the 911 salaries, the various components. So as I noted previously on line 23, the revenue before transfers in will be $205,247,569, which is about $5.4 million over our amended budget, representing 2.7% growth. With the combination of the transfers in, which are regular transfers in, a portion of that is the debt service transfer from the 3/8 cent fund. We took out short-term financing notes in the first 5 years of the 10-year 3/8 cent capital tax in order to accelerate those projects. So as the tax comes in, the principal portion is then sent to the general fund. The general fund bears any interest costs, which has been very low. Borrowing rates have been very low. But you'll see the decrease there of about $1.2 million is because the notes are dropping off now. We only have one left that will be retired next year, which is the last year of the 3/8 cent tax if it's not renewed. So including the transfers in and that one-time carryover, the budget would be $210,100,969, representing a $6 million increase over the amended budget, or 3%. On page 14, it's just a little bit higher level summary, maybe a little bit bigger, easier to see, but it's the same numbers. Page 15 is a graph that shows the components of our revenue for the general fund. So you'll see that sales and use tax makes up $108,035,000, or 51% of our budget. The next two primary sources are our property tax revenues, which generate about 15%, franchise fees, which generate about 14%. So those three combined generate 80% of our operating budget for the general fund. And then you see the remaining components there. So now I'll move on to talk about our other fund revenues. So our street fund, which is a special revenue fund, the revenues in this fund come from a road tax, property tax millage, and from state turnbacks for streets, roads, bridges, curbs, gutters, ditches, everything having to do with streets. And it's restricted for that purpose. It's also used for various forms of transportation. So our property tax millage, consistent with the property tax for the general fund, is anticipated to grow at 2.5%. We've got that same forecast here, which will bring it to 142, or up 142,000 to 6.4 million. Which is still slightly under our 2020 original budget, but it is 2.5% growth over our amended budget. The state turnback funds, we just received the information yesterday from the state on the anticipated state turnback funds. RDOT is projecting, there's two components. There's the road user tax, which is just a flat amount per gallon. It's not based on the price of gas, but it's just based on the number of gallons. It's a rate per gallon. And then the other piece is that half-cent sales tax for roads that we receive an allocation of. So with those two components combined, I think about $9.6 million of that is the user piece, and the remaining is the half-cent sales tax. So the user piece is anticipated to decline approximately $400,000, partially offset by a little bit of growth in the half-cent sales tax piece. And I think that's primarily due to just reduced fuel usage, as there's just fewer cars on the road. I will say that they have underestimated revenue every year, and we did make budget adjustments to raise that amount in 2020, consistent with what we've been receiving. And so I really kind of expect to beat this number, but we wanted to reflect the guidance that we're receiving from RDOT. Then as we move down, you'll notice in transfers in, there's the same situation here. The change, the normal transfers in come from an overhead allocation from the Waste Disposal Fund for the shared management, and then there's a parking meter allocation that comes from the general fund for parking enforcement. That's what makes up the 467.7 that you see each year. This year it'll be 550,000, and that increase is associated with the carryover of the health insurance holiday premium savings for the street fund. On the next slide, we'll talk about our waste disposal fund revenues. So here, these are generated by user fees. The sanitation fees are expected to increase 480,000, and this is tied to the increase in the recycling contract that will begin April 1st, 2021, that was authorized in Ordinance 21-891. So this increase will pass through directly as a contract payment out for recycling. The city does not retain that increase. The landfill fees, if you'll look back at 2019, they were just under $2 million. We had originally budgeted just over $2 million for 2020, but due to delays in getting the new cell constructed, the landfill began turning away commercial haulers in order to make sure there was adequate capacity for both residential and our contracted carriers until the new cell could be completed. The new cell has been completed. It is open. I talked with Director Honeywell last night, and he was telling me that they're gradually increasing to allow the commercial haulers to come back, but that it's important that that first layer of waste that goes in the new cell be primarily from residential so that it does not damage the liner of the cell. If you have a lot of commercial, it can damage the liner at the very bottom. So they want to get a good layer of residential waste first. So they're expecting that to increase to a little over $1.5 million. This also includes a one-time fee of $46,000 for a new cards program, which I cannot fully explain, but it's a fee for, and I don't have a lot of information, but it's a fee for a one-time fee, I think, for someone who's going to be utilizing the landfill. And benefiting, well, I'm not sure that I can, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have tried to explain it.
Cards is an entity that does basically construction waste, and they have asked for a host city agreement. We've got that in the works right now, and there's a cost. That's where that would be coming from.
Thank you. So then the decrease in miscellaneous revenue, which is $982,000, that's because we had several insurance recoveries in 2020 that from equipment or vehicles that were either damaged by fire or in accidents. And so we're not anticipating a recurrence of that. So that's a decline there. But the net impact of all of those adjustments is an increase of $67,564. And again, you'll see transfers in. The waste disposal does not normally have transfers in, but that's their share of the health insurance holiday premium that was set aside in 2020 to be used in 2021. So the next fund will be the fleet fund, and this is an internal service fund that provides services to all other city departments. So the labor and management cost, and this is not just salaries, this is also their supplies and things like that. That is remaining pretty consistent with 2020 levels. Fuel is actually decreasing. The rate per gallon will be going, and this includes a 14-cent markup that pays for the labor and supplies in the fuel and acquisitions division, but the rate will be moving to the budgeted rate, including that 14 cents, is $2.09 for unleaded, $2.19 for diesel, compared to $2.30 in 2020 for unleaded and $2.60 for diesel. The difference, the reason there's an increase instead of a decrease, is because we're comparing to the amended budget, which had a significant decrease in usage. When you compare it to the original and to last year, it's a decrease. Then if you look at the big decreases in our parts and user fees and our sublets, and that's where we have major repairs, hydraulic systems, engine replacements, and all of our parts for the vehicles, but with the fleet replacement programs we've put in place, and with the leasing of vehicles and the turnover that we're doing in our public safety vehicles, we've had a substantial decrease in the amount of repairs cost. So that savings is, of course, passed on to the departments. So overall, the fleet budget will decrease from $13,836,000 in the amended budget to $13,390,000 in the 2021 budget, which is actually almost $1 million decrease from our original 2020 budget. On the next slide, you'll see our vehicle storage fund. This is an enterprise fund. We had a slight decrease due to COVID in our permits, but primarily the decrease was in the administration fees, the vehicle storage fees, and the wrecker fees, and that was primarily just due to fewer vehicles on the road not being hauled in and stored. Our auction fees are actually holding, I guess, because we had vehicles on the lot. There's a slight decrease in 2021 just to, I guess, the reduced volume of vehicles coming in. But overall, this is going to be slightly better than our amended budget. We'll be moving to $1,759,847 compared to the amended budget of $1,712,000, but still significantly lower than the $2,066,000 we had originally projected in 2020. And again, the key areas there are just storage and wrecker fees, with fewer vehicles on the road being towed. On the next slide are our parking garage revenues. And this is the last fund that we'll talk about. So our licenses and licenses and permits are the licensed taxi drivers, and those are dedicated to the debt service on the parking bonds. The street repair reimbursements were significantly up in 2019, and we're experiencing that in 2020 as well. We have included in our amendment an increase there based on our actual experience. And that was due to a couple of things. Y'all will recall that you passed an ordinance to charge fines if there was not prompt reconstruction of roads after utility relocations. So that has generated some of the increase, but then also all of the digital build out with the fiber that AT&T and Verizon's been doing throughout the city had really increased that as well. And then major construction projects with relocation of utilities has driven that up. We are not anticipating for it to continue at that level. The utilities understand now that we're serious, and we're starting to see less fines come in, and we believe the build out for the digital is nearing completion, and we just don't want to count on this to continually be growing at that unusual rate. Our parking meter revenues and our daily parking I'll talk about in just a moment. Monthly parking has remained fairly consistent through the pandemic. We've seen a little bit of a drop off, but it's still been performing in the 90 to 92% of pre-COVID activity. The parking meters and the daily parking have seen a significant decline. We're expecting that to begin to recover, much like our other charges for services, but we're not expecting them to get back to 2019 levels until after 2022. And the same is true as the surface parking. So overall, our parking garage fund, we're expecting to generate about $2.5 million, which is about $460,000 less than our 2020 original budget, and up slightly from our 2020 amended. And again, the decrease in the street repair reimbursements is offset by increases in parking as people return to the downtown area and to work. So in summary, the revenue budget forecast for all of our budgeted funds is a total of $272,709,891. And as we went through, you'll see each fund is decreasing a little bit from where it was pre-COVID, but we are beginning to see a gradual recovery. So that will be the basis for the expenditure budget that you see Next week, we want to bring you balanced budgets. There will be, of course, the parking garage fund and the vehicle storage fund normally have some revenue. The parking garage has to have revenue to offset debt service. We have to have a certain amount of coverage there. So that concludes this presentation. You can take time to absorb it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions either tonight or next week when we talk about expenditures.
Again, thank you so much, Sarah, for taking this time to walk us through this 2021 budget revenue projection as we journey throughout our budgeting process and move towards the 2021 budget expenditure proposal that we will share next week. Again, welcome any questions today, later tonight, or throughout the remainder of this week before we get to next Tuesday on November the 17th. Please feel free to reach out either to the authors of this revenue projection, which is Bruce, myself, Sarah, and company, along with other members of the Office of Executive Administration as well. So please direct those questions to the three of us, and we'll try our best to get you the answer as quickly as possible.
I would like to recognize our Treasury Manager, Scott Massinelli. He does an awful lot of work with the county, the state, and the various utility companies, and tracking all of our revenues from all the various sources, you know, month by month. So he does a lot of the groundwork in putting this together.
Here, here.
Director Adcock?
Yes.
And then Vice Mayor. Well, actually, let me go in the order. Director Webb, Vice Mayor Wyrick, then Director Adcock. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Linehan. Just a quick question. Would you be able to email that to us this evening?
Certainly.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who worked on it.
Thank you so much, Director Webb. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Thank you, Sarah, for this comprehensive report. My question was the same as Director Webb's. I would like to have a copy of this via email.
Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure the board receive this via email.
Thank you.
Director Adcock.
Yes, when would this be online for the citizens to look at, please?
As quickly as possible.
People watching might want to know when it's
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow. Thank you.
Any more questions from members of the board? Mr. Attorney?
Mayor, I just want to note that tomorrow is the day that we recognize the sacrifice both in service of lives, of bodies for our veterans. The City of Little Rock is extremely well represented, particularly in our police and fire departments, at MEMS, and throughout the organization with veterans. The veteran I always make sure I remember tomorrow is Bruce Moore, who on his birthday stepped into 120-degree temperatures as part of the First Iraq War, where he served with distinction and received the Army Commendation Medal.
Let's give Bruce a round of applause. And we do appreciate all of the men and women of the veterans community within the City of Little Rock, as well as our team members here. And we all know that in recognition of their sacrifice and their service to our nation, City Hall will be closed tomorrow. That being said, meeting adjourned.